Welcome to Thoughts Off the Stab. Thank you for joining the sesh with me, Justin Barone. I hope you're having a good day, a good week, a good month, a good year. I hope that life is being good to you is what I'm saying. Have you ever decided to take a tea break? Have you ever wondered what happens when you stop smoking weed cold turkey? Well, I could tell you. There's a lot of different things that happen, but one of the most major things that happen is you start having vivid dreams. And you want to know why you have those vivid dreams? Well, simply put, it's because weed itself blocks your ability to get to REM sleep. And REM sleep is where the dreams happen, baby. This last week, I've been having a hard time sleeping. And, it hasn't been too bad, but there's been a few nights where I've had, a couple nights throughout the week where I don't sleep very well. I'm in and out of bed. I'm not really getting that deep sleep. I mean, I feel fine and rested for the most part the next day. I don't feel like I'm dragging my ass too bad, but it just takes me a little while to get started. Now, about 2 weeks ago, I took a tea break because I went on vacation, and you can't really take weed to where I went on vacation, nor do I travel with weed anyway, because I just think it's generally a bad idea. But I took about 10 to 13 days off weed, and I just stopped cold turkey. I took a few days off before I left just to be prepared, and I came back, and when I came back, I started having some pretty crazy vivid dreams. So I figured I should do a sesh because I've talked to a few people in my DMs about the stuff that they've learned from the podcast, and I realized that the last few episodes have been commentary on social stuff and maybe a few goofy ones, but I just like to try and make people laugh, like the one about the dog and getting a dog. But I thought this time what I should do is I should maybe try and help people understand what's going to happen to them when they take a tea break. Because ultimately you should take a tea break. If you don't know what a tea break is, it's a tolerance break. It's taking some time off so that your body can find its baseline again and you're not so dependent on weed, basically, or pot, whatever you want to call it, right? So I took a tea break because I knew I was going away. I didn't want to go through some of the symptoms while I was away that are typical with taking a break from weed. So what I did was I started 2 days ahead of time. Now, the problem with some of this is that you end up having these crazy vivid dreams. And they're just nuts. If you thought that if you were smoking weed because you thought you were crazy and you were using it to manage your crazy, well, if you stop and then you end up, having a prolonged tea break, you're going to rediscover your crazy because you're going to end up in dreamscapes that rival Freddy Krueger. They're very, very vivid. I forget what the name, what the phrase is called when you have a dream where you can manipulate what happens in it. But that's what I had. After my bit of a tea break, all of a sudden, I started having these dreams. One dream, I was in this cabin with college kids, but I'm my age now, being me now with a group of. That doesn't make any sense. Right? And then I'm traveling through this massive sprawling cottage to find these different rooms. I finally do, and I find a room which seems to be a bunch of abducted kids. What? What is my brain trying to tell me there? I don't know, but it was crazy. I'm arguing with people in there. I wake up before there's any kind of resolve, and then throughout the course of the next few days, those are the dreams I have. They're not really nightmares. They're just more confusing, and I can, instead of it being third person most of my dreams, this time it's first person, full on. I can decide what I'm going to say to the people in the dream. I think that I'm living in the dream for a portion of the dream. I believe that I'm there and I can control what I do. So for example, when I was in this dream with the cabin, I was in an argument with one of these kids. I'm 44 years old. I'm not arguing with a 20-year-old about what the most fun thing to do is that weekend, So, in those dreams, I was able to depict and change what I wanted to. So all of a sudden I'd open a door and a room would look a certain way, then all of a sudden it would flash to something different. It's very unnerving. It creates a very like rocky sleep. But the reason that you start having these dreams is because when you go on a tea break, all of a sudden the floodgates for regular production of hormones and chemicals in the brain happens, and you get flooded with all of the stuff that your brain has been trying to do, but you've been preventing it from doing, right? So, for example, right? The human body is designed to take on cannabis and react to cannabis. It's adaptable to cannabis, right? But the one thing that cannabis does is it shuts off your brain's ability to produce a regulated amount of dopamine and serotonin so that it can function properly. And the whole process of dreaming is that it's your brain's way to file and sort all the events, thoughts, and interactions that happen through the day. It's also a way for your subconscious to say, hey, dummy, let me tell you something. There's some stuff that's wrong, right? So normally dreams are somewhat reflective of what's gone on through the day and what your psyche is trying to organize. Okay? These dreams were not like that, dude. My dream had no point. I found these kids. I thought that they were trapped in this sprawling estate or this sprawling cabin, and turns out the kids didn't want to leave. And there was a babysitter, and the parents had rented out, this was the first time they'd rented out the cabin, and they'd left for their vacation for a couple days, and there was supposed to be this babysitter lady watching them, but the babysitter had left, and all of a sudden a ghost of the babysitter is telling me why the babysitter's not there, and then I wake up. Like, how am I supposed to interpret that? Because I could tell you right now, I didn't have any interactions with a ghost. I have not been around any college kids, like, I definitely would never be in a very expensive cabin, at least not at this point. I'd like to have one. I'm just saying. And there's always this like underlying Rob Zombie level of fear. Like something crazy is about to happen. Like a clown's going to hop out of the closet and hack my head off. You know what I mean? So that was one of the dreams that I had. And that one was, I think, the first one, which actually ended up happening on like day 11. And, instead of having a resolve, because most dreams I find don't really have a resolve, right? You just kind of do the thing, and then you do it, and then you wake up and you're like, whoa, that was messed up, dude. Like, what's the problem here? What's going on? You just feel disoriented. And then for the next 3 days, I ended up having like weirder and progressively weirder dreams that literally made no sense. So I started to get freaked out because I'm like, every time I close my freaking eyes, I think I'm going to end up in a Freddy Krueger state of mind. Like, I'm going to wake up dead with fingers stuck in me later, I don't want that to happen. And then on top of that, I'm a big believer that in dreams, you should pay attention to them because they're trying to tell you something. They're trying to help you work something out, right? Mentally, that you're not getting over. I used to have a reoccurring zombie dream, and it literally went on for like years. For like 3 years, it would reoccur, not all year, but like I'd get it a few times a month, and it would progressively get longer and longer until events in my life changed. And I made a very drastic life change. All of a sudden it stopped. Because I learned from that dream what it was really trying to tell me was that I had to let go of control. I was trying to control too much, and there's a lot of stuff that you can't control. Well, these dreams about being with like college kids and in on vacation with them makes no sense to me. Because like I'm not hanging out with I'm too old for that shit. You know what happened if I approached a group of college kids and was like, "Hey, you want to hang out?" They would literally laugh at me and be like, "Okay, old guy, get the fuck out of here." Like, who are we kidding here? So why is my brain being like, do I miss college? Because I don't think I do. I don't really miss it. But yeah. The other problem with having these dreams is that you end up not realizing they're a dream. So there's a certain point of time where shit starts to hit the fan and you're panicking because you're like, I don't know what's about to happen here. And then all of a sudden, like I said, you wake up and you're just like, what just happened? You feel uneasy, all that stuff. But how are you supposed to organize your dreams and pay attention to them and learn what it is that your subconscious is trying to tell you if there's a whole bunch of events that don't make any sense? I had to go through online symbolism books, dream symbolism, like articles, to figure out what each thing did. I suggest you do it because if you have recurring dreams, they might be trying to tell you something and you should probably try and learn something. And then that way it takes away some of the anxiety from it too. But my initial point was if you're going to take a tea break, you have to be aware that you are about to have some very vivid nightmares. If you don't like clowns, clowns are coming, baby. They're going to come get you. Okay? If you don't like dogs and animals or whatever, that's coming to get you. If you have a fear of drowning or spiders, guess what's coming to get you? That's right, the lake and the spider. Okay? So don't be surprised when you start having these outlandishly crazy dreams. When you're trying to understand why you're having these crazy dreams, it's actually more simple than trying to figure out the dream itself. So I looked up a bunch of articles on why this happens, like what happens in your brain when you quit weed cold turkey and you start experiencing these like very surreal, very vivid dreams. Okay? Well, based on, what is this? FHE Health. It's a rehab, I believe, that basically studies withdrawal symptoms of different types of substances, and they've done some study on how marijuana affects the brain. So if you want to check out this article, I'm just going to read you how this affects the brain, but it's at fherehab.com, okay? Or you could just look up how marijuana affects the brain. But basically, this is what they say. They're substance abuse specialists. They're doctors. I believe that there's neuroscientists involved as well, with partnerships. Anyway, the point is, this is what actually happens. This is from fhehealth.com. So the reason why the brain has receptors designed specifically for marijuana chemicals is that the brain actually produces cannabinoid substances similar to pot psychoactive ingredients. Cannabinoids are naturally made in the cortex, an area of the brain that guides movement, process, thoughts, and emotions, and interprets sensory information. Anandamide is an important endogenous cannabinoid that functions as a neurotransmitter in the brain. Anandamide facilitates chemical messaging among neurons and the central nervous system. Let me do that one again. Anandamide facilitates chemical messaging among neurons and the central nervous system nerve cells. Because marijuana's primarily psychoactive chemical, THC, is so comparable molecularly to anandamide and other cannabinoids, THC easily infiltrates and activates cannabinoid receptors. Okay? So, disruption of the normal cannabinoid receptor activity causes the mental and physical effects of a pot high. In addition, smoking pot increases the level of dopamine and serotonin, two neurotransmitters implicated in sleep, mood, and pleasure. The brains of daily marijuana smokers eventually develop a tolerance to excessive serotonin and dopamine levels, which forces the brain to reduce its natural release of these two chemicals. Consequently, having intense dreams after quitting weed could be due to a lack of serotonin and dopamine in the brain. So you're overdoing it. That's really what's happening. You're cutting off these receptors, or you're flooding these receptors with an excessive amount that they stop production. They get fat and lazy. It's like, it's kind of like feeding, a fat guy cake. As soon as he gets an excessive amount of cake, he's not getting off the couch, right? Well, that's what's happening to these receptors in your brain. You're feeding it on a daily, whatever amount of marijuana you feed it, so they're oversatisfied. And they've got, the turkey sleeps. What's it called? I forget. but you basically, after you eat turkey, you get a little nap in. Well, that's what's happening with this. And so those receptors have become super lazy and they don't do anything anymore. And then it takes roughly, I don't know, for me, I found that it took it took 10 days to have the dreams, but I think that's because I was away. So I was mentally stimulated in other, forms. So it made it a little easier to not smoke weed, because let's be honest, a lot of people will go through withdrawal symptoms from weed, right? Well, that makes trying to take a tea break that much harder, because a lot of people get very irritable. Some people are using it for sleep, like specifically to go to sleep. Now, if you're using it for sleep, the reason that you're not having any dreams is because, again, you're overloading those receptors, so you never actually hit that REM state cycle, so you don't actually have those dreams. You might actually, that's a lie. You might end up having dreams, but you won't remember them. And you also may feel like you get a better rested sleep, and you may get a little more sleep when you smoke weed, but there are some lingering effects that you don't notice over time. So the next day, sure, you're not hungover and you're not freaking out, or you're not hungover and you're not noticeably dragging ass, but inside you sort of feel like a little to the left. Think about when you first used to smoke weed, right? You smoked weed and the next day you were kind of off a little for the next day or two because your body was just getting introduced to it. Now, 20, 30 years later, you're smoking weed and your body's just gotten used to it, so you don't actually feel what the difference is the next day. So even though you don't have a hangover, you're a little more rested, your brain is definitely a little more sluggish because all these receptors are like, "Ah." It's like they got home from a rave, and they're just like, okay, make it stop for a bit. And then you get like 9 hours in the day where you're like, okay, I'm good. And the receptors have time to rejuvenate. And then the next thing you know, it's 9 o'clock at night. And they're all like, okay, bud, I slept all day. We're good. Let's now hit me up because I can't get my dopamine fix. That's basically what I think kind of happens, or that's the way that I would depict it as I'm explaining it, because that seems to, you have to visualize it sometimes. I do. So a lot of users, when they stop cold turkey, they're gonna have some what they call withdrawal symptoms. Now, I have a little disagreement with calling this stuff withdrawal symptoms, because, like, listen to this. This is what withdrawal symptoms are, okay? Irritability and anger, aggression, lack of appetite, anxiety and nervousness, depression, insomnia, and disturbing dreams. Vivid dreams, nightmares that make you feel like you're actually going to die there, But other than the disturbing dreams, insomnia, and depression, okay, the irritability and anger, aggression, lack of appetite, anxiety and nervousness, isn't that just like everyday life? like don't most people just go through life trying to manage that anyway, sober? So, like, as potheads, does that make us a little weaker? Because those aren't really symptoms. Those are just momentary emotions, that you have to relearn to manage because you've been managing it with the ganja for way too long. And now your brain's all, I don't know what to do, man. And now your brain's got to sort itself out. And that takes a few days. I noticed that within about 3 days, I kind of hit back to my baseline where not having weed, I gradually, slowly stopped worrying about having weed. Now, at first, I was a little panicked because I did smoke it before bed because I felt like I got a better rest. Here's the thing. When I was on vacation, yes, we were doing more too, so I was more tired at the end of the day and we were in the sun a lot. But one of the things was I didn't have a problem sleeping. And it wasn't like I switched weed for booze. I just didn't have weed. And then some nights, I had like 4 cappuccinos a day, or espressos. Cappuccinos. I had 4 cappuccinos a day. Dude, I was like wired. I'd have a cappuccino at 3 in the afternoon. Still go to bed at like 10. Okay? So don't tell me you can't sleep, because quite honestly, you can sleep. I think that a lot of people, when they get into the tea break mode, right, they are just very worried about not having weed. I think that you have a mental connection to that weed, and your mental connection is making you think that you need it. Some people get a physical dependency. I understand that. I'm not trying to diminish it. I'm just saying that I think most of that part of it is mental. Because think about it this way: weed is legal in Canada. If you take a break, there's going to be more. There used to be a time when it wasn't going to be that way. Like, there was no chance in hell that you were going to get, more weed if you took a tea break, because who knows? People could crack down on it. Your dealer could go bust. Like, he could take off and be like, I'm not selling weed anymore, and you're out. That's not the case. You can literally go to almost any corner store in Canada and pick up some weed. Like, there's an abundance, dude. You can always find some. So you just have to kind of tell yourself that, like, hey, it's okay. The weed's not going anywhere. So if I take a 10-day break, I'll just go get weed later. But too many people get caught up in the worry of having weed, or not having weed, sorry, or running out of weed or whatever. So I think that plays into it. But I think that's a mental thing. I don't think that's a physical addiction thing. I think that some people want to say that it's a physical addiction thing, when realistically it's not. You just kind of got to find other things that occupy your time and your focus. But yeah, if you were wondering what was going to happen if you quit weed cold turkey, and you were trying to prepare for like a 10-day excursion on the tea break express, and try to reset your baseline, which I think is a good idea. As a guy who has smoked weed consistently every day for like over 20 years. No, 20 years. About 20 years. I would say that one of the best things I could rediscover is taking a tea break, even though it was inadvertent. Over the last little while, I've slowly been smoking less and less in terms of every day. So now I'll go a couple days between smoke sessions, right? And then if I do this podcast, I'll smoke a little more while I'm on there. But overall, I've kind of mitigated the amount of weed that I'm smoking on an overtly regular basis. Just because I'm old and it's probably time to settle it down a bit. But I highly recommend it, because I feel like as weed smokers, we just get so norm with the whole being high and thinking that the high is helping us with all our mental ailments and all that fun stuff. I think that we forget that we at one point in life didn't always need this to maintain. And as a recreational user, I'll say that as a recreational user, yeah, we don't really, we put too much emphasis on trying to use weed to maintain. So I think it's a good idea that sometimes we take a tea break, maybe every, couple months or so, for a couple weeks, just to kind of get back to basics. Get back to the baseline of what it was like. Because don't you notice now that you don't giggle? There's really no giggle factor anymore unless you find some like really crazy strain. Back in the day when you first started smoking it, it was almost like every time you hit the joint, you couldn't stop giggling. When you take a tea break for 2 weeks or longer, you start to hit that baseline again, where if you smoke a couple things, you say some dumb shit and you giggle a lot, okay? So if you're looking for the giggle, take a tea break. If you find that you're basically living in a haze and you kind of feel off, maybe take a tea break. That might be time. But because of the receptors in your brain regarding dopamine and serotonin, if you take that tea break and you have an angry brain, your angry brain is going to scare the shit out of you, okay? So be aware of that. If you have like a brain like mine that's a little off to the left, sometime one night you might get scared, the next night you might be chased by a giant gummy bear, you might be getting, eaten by like a sloth. I don't know. But I do know that when you're in that dreamscape, it's going to be very vivid. You're going to feel like you can interact with it. You're going to feel like you can't get away, okay? Don't be terrified. It's not the end of the world. It will be all right. You will wake up. That's all I have to say about that, okay? So, yeah, just take a tea break every now and then. Get yourself back to baseline, because then, once you get to baseline, let me tell you, it takes a few days, but you don't need to smoke as much. So, like, you can actually conserve weed. And if you don't overdo it, like, when I got back from my vacation, I had a bong hit. And I filled the bowl. It's one of those small little, like funnel style bowls. So I put a little in there. I lit it. I made sure it was all burning. I took the hit. It's not a big bong. It's a little bong. So it's just like a one hitter. I took that hit. I was like, oh, that's delicious. I really like that. So I hit it again. I didn't even repack the bowl. I just smoked like a bit more of the bowl. And after I took that hit, maybe about 45 minutes later, I was staring off into space like I was floating through the cosmos, dude. My brain was out there. It was gone. Like, I had no thoughts. Okay? So, like, if you and that's not even probably a gram. It was probably like half gram. And I was just, gone. And the weed was not overly strong. It was sort of middle of the road weed. So, a tea break can do a lot of things for you. It can reset your baseline. It helps your brain and your mind allow the filing and organization of the memories from the day and the things that your subconscious is worrying about or thinking about and trying to resolve in your life. So let that happen, because weed, as we all know, just keeps asking questions about why this is this and why do we feel like this and why do I like that. There's no end result with weed. You might go down a thought path and be like, oh, that's crazy, but the weed is always asking why. Why do I get along with it? Why do I accept it? Why? There's no real definitive like, I do this now. Because as soon as you think that when you're smoking, the weed goes, yeah, but what about this? So I think you need the shut off of the weed sometimes so that your brain can then reorganize all of its conscious and subconscious thoughts so that it can, make you a relatively regular member of society. Because you don't necessarily realize how far off the path you are until you get off the path, and then you're like, whoa, what happened there, dude? You went way left. So take a tea break. Expect crazy visions and dreams. Enjoy them. Like, I mean, realistically, it's a new experience, right? So just enjoy them. Because it's your psyche coming back to you like a kid and being like, hey, come here, look at me, So do that. Yeah, so I just wanted to let you know that was the case. And for this sesh, I've been smoking Tribal's Galactic Runts vape cart. It's an indica. It's 76%. It's a live resin. It's really tasty. If you're looking for something that'll make you thoughtful and something that will make you feel like you're floating in space, this is a good one. It's a good body buzz. This one actually gives you a bit of the giggles. You feel a little in your eyes. It's not overwhelming. You're not going to pass out. You're not going to fall over. It will help you go to sleep. So if you're taking a tea break, obviously don't smoke this. It's tasty. What does it taste like? It's hard to say. You know what it tastes like? It tastes like a mixed berry pack of like Mott's gummy bears that kids take to school in the little yellow packages. You know what I'm saying? Tastes kind of like that. Tastes a little fruity, like a berry. You got kind of like a little piney flavor in there. So let's see. Does it tell me what the terps are? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Okay. So the terp profile is 8.5%. You got limonene, caryophyllene, and linalool as the top 3 terps. It's 76.8% THC. So one of the things about live resin is that live resin is always a little bit, it's lower in percentage, but it's a little stronger in the high because it's more natural. A distillate is more manufactured. It's a different form of extraction, whereas I feel like live resin is a little bit more natural. It stays to its like original it stays more true to its original product. But this one is really good. I enjoy it because it's an indica that gives you a little fun before it makes you have a little nap. You know what I'm saying? It's a good time. It's a good one to smoke as a treat after you've completed your tea break. Yeah. So if you're gonna get something for Tribal, they're a little more expensive because they're live resin, but they're totally worth it. They last a little longer. The high itself lasts a little longer. The example is if you are smoking a distillate, let's say you get high for like 45 minutes to an hour. This high, you could potentially feel the effects for like an hour and a half, 2 hours kind of thing. If it's really good, it'll last longer than that. But generally, that's where if you're still feeling it a little bit 2 hours later, that's a good solid cart. It's kind of like diamonds. Diamonds are a rush of high, and then they sort of like teeter out after a bit. Live resin, like these ones, I feel like what they do is they just continue the high and ride it right out. It's kind of a nice little. It's like a blanket of high that just keeps you all cozy and happy, and you don't have to re-up your dopamine and serotonin levels as often as you do with some of the other stuff. So if you're going to get a new cart or you're looking for something that's got some flavor and a really wicked high, definitely go for the Tribal Galactic Runts if you can find it. Again, it's an indica, so if you don't like indicas, don't get it because you will be more relaxed. Your brain's a little more clear, but your body's definitely more, oh, I could take a nap right now. Yeah, those are my thoughts off the stem for this week. I hope you enjoyed the sesh. Thank you for joining me, Justin Barone, your friendly neighborhood pothead, on Thoughts Off the Stem on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Anchor, YouTube. Anchor's gone. YouTube, Podchaser, Good Pods, Pandora, Podbean, wherever you get a podcast, it's out there, baby. So help me out if you've got this far and subscribe to the show. Let your friends know, like it, leave some comments, tell me what you like, tell me what you don't like, tell me what you want to see me do. I'll do stuff on the requests of you guys. And don't forget to check out tots420.com and subscribe on YouTube. Did I say that? I might have. Subscribe on everywhere. Wherever you're watching this, subscribe, follow it, man. Let me know what you think. I really want some feedback here. Also, we can get more of a dialogue going on if you tell me what you want to hear, because then I can do a better job of making things that you might want to know about, even if it's ridiculous. You've seen, if you're a follower of I do ridiculous shit. Doesn't matter. There's no topic off the table. Whatever you have on your mind, let me know. Yeah, and check out tots420.com for a bunch of different things like episode lists, links, blog posts, weed facts, some crazy other just daily people facts. That's pretty much it. Yeah. So I hope you had a good time. Hope you enjoyed the sesh. And until next time, keep your lids low, baby. Yeah.